The Big Ten has its new commissioner. What should Tony Petitti be doing in the first days that he's on the job? And who is this guy?
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, everyone. This is Nate Dickinson. You're tuned in to Locked On Big Ten, the show where you get everything you need to know about what's going on in the Big Ten Conference and your first listen every day. Our show today is brought to you in part by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, so let's dive right into the biggest news of the week in college sports. Big Ten has its new commissioner. Name is Tony Petitti, a guy who has been all around sports and media, and also is someone that I don't know if we really had on the radar. It wasn't a name that I had mentioned when we had gone over some potential likely candidates for this job. We mentioned Jim Phillips, who ended up getting an extension at the ACC just days before the Big Ten ended up hiring Petitti. We talked about other people in media. We talked about people already within the Big Ten, but I suspected that this was going to be an outside hire. It was an outside hire, and you get in this guy, Tony Petitti, a guy who can really come in and at least use his experience to make an impact right away if he, and probably more importantly, the institutions in the Big Ten choose that that is what he wants to do. So let's learn more about what he exactly is as a professional. Resume for this guy: former Deputy Commissioner of Major League Baseball, CEO of the MLB Network, an executive at CBS Sports and ABC Sports. He created the BCS, the Bowl Championship Series, that ended up deciding national championships a little while back. He's a Harvard Law graduate. There's a whole lot more to the resume too. But the point is, as of course you expected, with one of the more powerful jobs in college sports up for grabs, whoever this guy was that the Big Ten was going to hire, or girl, was going to be someone who had a laundry list of a resume. And this guy has it. The Big Ten's official statement on the hiring of Petitti: Tony's capabilities to navigate the complexities of changing marketplace environments, history as a collaborative leader, and passion for academics and collegiate athletics made him the right leader at the right time for the Big Ten Conference. Big Ten had been, of course, going over this for a little while. Kevin Warren is finishing up here this week as the official commissioner of the Big Ten, but Petitti won't actually take over until the middle of next month. I believe the exact date was May 17th. It's pretty close, I'm pretty sure, to exactly a month from here today. But again, it is about a month away where he will officially be taking office. And he has himself an interesting position here to start things off here. I think in what you're getting in Tony Petitti is an experienced guy, a guy who has been around everything the Big Ten is interested in as far as the steps it wants to take next. So he obviously checks, as we went over everything, all of those boxes on that front. But can he be what Kevin Warren failed to be in keeping everybody happy? That is the biggest thing. And I think that if you look across what the Big Ten has as far as this situation, I think what you get in Tony Petitti is a voice for the conference, because that was one of the bigger things that Kevin Warren struggled with in his time, was that he would go out and say things in the media, and then at some point, some of the institutions were upset with what he was saying. On expansion was the most notable, but I have suspicions there could have been other stuff going on there too. I'm obviously just thinking inside my head here, no one talks to me or anything. But with Tony Petitti, the point is, you get yourself a guy who has at least, maybe not the Big Ten's, maybe he won't tell you the truth, but he'll tell you what the Big Ten wants to hear. And over the last however many months it was when Kevin Warren was out there, he maybe wasn't always doing that. So maybe it's not what actually the Big Ten wants, but this is a voice of the Big Ten now in a way that I think Kevin Warren was not quite as much, with how he diverted from where some institutions wanted him to be. I don't think he was driven out or anything like that. I mean, he seems like someone who's going to take that Bears job. But I think that when they went through this process, and when they were looking for who they wanted to hire, if I was guessing, the biggest thing I would be wanting if I was one of those Big Ten schools and the group of 14 as a whole, I would want that commissioner to be able to at least be the puppet. And, saying that someone's a puppet's obviously not a compliment, but that is the job, right? Like Roger Goodell, he goes out as the commissioner of the NFL, and he speaks basically in whatever words the 32 owners in the NFL want him to. That's how it works. With this guy, after what we got from Warren, I think that Tony Petitti is going to be, at the very least, somebody who is that puppet for the Big Ten, is someone who is speaking for the conference as a whole. Because you may have noticed over the course of this search, we had not that. When Kevin Warren was here, there was diverting messages. After it was announced that he would be leaving, a lot of these reports and things that were rumored about the commissioner's search, we learned from individual institutions, whether it be ADs, chancellors, presidents, just little tidbits of things that they would say. We tried to get some information off of. And now you have, I think, the guy who will, if not give it to you straight, give it to you the way the Big Ten wants to give it to you. That, I think, is the biggest key here, is that he will be the guy who tells you what the Big Ten wants you to hear. So that is at least settled. And that, I think, was the biggest thing, if you were a Big Ten institution, that you were concerned about going forward. Because let's be honest, it's going to be pretty hard to mess up this job. Tony Petitti is not going to be somebody who just runs the Big Ten into the ground. It's pretty close to impossible to do, if not impossible. However, he can be that voice, and he will be. I think that's the one thing you can be most sure of as we start his tenure as Big Ten commissioner. Oh, and also maybe win some games too. A national championship in football or basketball would certainly be nice. The only way he really messes this up is if, like, the SEC just blows the Big Ten out of the water, which I don't see happening. But the question does have to be asked. What is it that Tony Petitti needs to do in the first days as Big Ten commissioner to make sure that he's getting off to the right foot? We're going to talk about that here in just a minute on Locked On Big Ten as we continue along with the program. Before we get into that, though, the playoffs are almost here in the NBA, and it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, other props, anything that you want. And of course, when Big Ten sports get up again and you hear a line on the show, it's coming from FanDuel. If you listen to the Locked On NBA show or any others, the lines they talk about are coming from FanDuel. So you can play along with us over at the site at FanDuel.com and get started right now by heading over to their website, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get your no sweat first bet, where you get up to $1,000 back after your first bet if it doesn't hit. So you don't have to worry about losing your money on that first wager. Head on over to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more and sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NBA. Back in on Locked On Big Ten, I'm Nate Dickinson. Let's go into what Tony Petitti needs to do here as he starts off as the Big Ten commissioner. Because while this is definitely a cushy job that he gets to step into, there are still some things on the to-do list to make sure that he gets off on the right foot. The first thing and most obvious of them is to figure out the transfer portal plan, or at least figure out the Big Ten's narrative on the transfer portal plan, because that was the one thing that Kevin Warren did worse than any other while he was here. Well, I guess I forget the pandemic whole situation, but maybe one of the worst things that Kevin Warren did while he was here was that he wasn't on the same page with all of the institutions all of the time. That is the job. You have to be able to be that voice, and Kevin Warren wasn't. So maybe you don't know what's going on with expansion yet, but you need to know what you're going to tell people about it, because the questions are not going to stop coming. And there is, whether you want to try and jump on something and do it right away, or maybe you lay back and see what other moves are made, you need to have a plan. And the Big Ten, I don't know right now what that plan is. And I would imagine they would wait until this new commissioner takes over to really put that plan into place. So I have a feeling that Petitti is going to come in here, take over this job, and immediately there's going to be that conversation amongst everyone about what to do next. Or maybe the schools have already talked about it and they're just going to tell Petitti, hey, this is the message. This is the angle. This is the narrative. Tell people that this is what we want. Again, I already said it may not be the truth, but at the very least, we're going to have something from the Big Ten here on what we want. And I'm very interested to see, like, even in that opening press conference when he first takes over, what exactly will he say when he's asked these questions? Because every single word, especially in these first few weeks and months, will be very, very articulated by the Big Ten. No doubt about that. Aside from that, as far as actually what to do as far as expansion, I think I want to be proactive here. One of the best things Kevin Warren did, at least if you ask me, is that he moved quickly. Not everyone liked it, as was made evident in things we've already talked about, but he did do things fast. You want to get a media rights deal done? Kevin Warren gets it done, gets a huge amount of money, sets the bar for the rest of the country, or, well, honestly, pretty much just the SEC now. If you want to add teams, SEC goes over and gets Oklahoma and Texas. Hey, I can match that. I'll go over to the West Coast, get USC and UCLA. He was really good at that stuff. And I think that if you want to get ahead, you should stay proactive. Maybe you wait to see what one or two of the next dominoes is to drop. But I don't know if maybe it's next off season or the season after that. If there aren't more Big Ten teams by then, I'd be very, very surprised. Very, very surprised. At the end of 2 off seasons from, so I'm trying to think. So if we're going into the 2025 football season and USC and UCLA don't have 2 other schools coming with them, whether it be from the West Coast or somewhere else where the Big Ten gets up to 20, I'd be very surprised. I don't know if the Big Ten commissioners feel the same way, Big Ten heads of schools feel the same way, but I really feel like that's the move to go. We'll see what ends up being the message from him. And I think that that's the biggest thing that we need to listen to when he first takes over is what is he saying about this expansion thing? Because it's the biggest thing going on in college sports right now. And it's probably the biggest reason why he was hired is because immediately a changing landscape is going to require someone who knows all of the angles. He knows the BCS, he knows the MLB, he knows everything. He knows media. He knows it all, knows all of it. So that is something where I think he would be able to jump in and make some moves right away. But either way, the biggest thing is to have that strategy, something that Kevin Warren just wasn't, I don't feel like, always on the same page with the Big Ten. Know that whatever happens, by the way, again, this is the voice. That's the key of the episode, is that the voice of the Big Ten has been found. Kevin Warren is out, and we've got Tony Petitti, who will be the puppet. He will. And that is the biggest, most important point. And by the way, if he dealt with Major League Baseball owners, I'm fully confident in his ability to be able to deal with the 14 schools in the Big Ten. Of course, not exactly the same situation, but he does have that kind of an advantage. And also, by the way, if I am Tony Petitti, I'm doing that first thing. I'm calling up everybody, and I imagine he already would have, not like you have to wait till the first day on the job for this. I'm calling up every head of every single one of the 14 and probably the 16 schools and being like, hey, communicate with me, talk with me, make sure that I know what you want so I can help with that. And I think that if he does that, everyone will love it, because I think that is the biggest thing on the to-do list when finding this guy, was to find somebody who won't say things out of turn. And there's not a whole lot to suggest how much Kevin Warren even did that, but any at all is enough to upset a lot of these schools, I would imagine. Let's wrap up things on the show here today as we get into the news from around the Big Ten. We've got a transfer update as all sorts of stuff is going on in the transfer portal. Penn State's Dalian Johnson has left the school. He's going to Florida Gulf Coast University. But aside from that, a whole lot of big additions being made for some Big Ten programs. Indiana, the biggest of them, huge bomb drops as they get Kalel Ware from Oregon, the only 5-star ranked recruit in the transfer portal that has committed so far. He heads over to Indiana, maybe the biggest get for anyone in the transfer portal this offseason, one of the biggest names out there. Averaged 6.5 points and 4 rebounds off the bench for Oregon last season, and a 6'11 guy who, again, everyone's saying is one of the bigger targets for someone to get. And for Indiana is someone to help out with that rebounding hole left by Trace Jackson Davis. Elsewhere, Noah Fernandez has transferred to Rutgers from UMass. Bryce Williams has transferred to Nebraska from Charlotte. And former 4-star recruit Rink Mast has committed to Nebraska from Bradley. Also, Justin Harmon commits to Illinois in the Fighting Illini from Utah Valley. As far as team rankings go in the transfer portal, well, according to 24/7 Sports, Indiana has the second best transfer success so far in this offseason. Mike Woodson continuing to kill it on that front when it comes to transfers, recruiting, getting guys to stay, anything like that. Mike Woodson's been really good with that. He continues to be good with that. Hoosiers are the number 2 team in the country in the transfer portal, mainly because of Kalel Ware. And also Michigan, the Wolverines, the number 8 team, according to 24/7 Sports, in transfer additions here this offseason. Of course, both those teams are losing guys too, so we'll see what exactly happens as we get into things to start next season, but of course, that's a long ways away. Michigan State's going to be really good next year, even without help from the transfer portal too. But some help could be needed for those 2 schools I mentioned, and we'll see what ends up happening as they get onto their campuses. Thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court, plus hear from the big name experts, coaches, and players throughout the landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. This has been Locked On Big Ten. Thanks again for listening in wherever it is that you listen or watch podcasts, YouTube, any of that stuff. Give us a follow, like the video, subscribe. All the clicks help. So go ahead and help us out if you don't mind too much. Hit subscribe on YouTube if you're watching right now. Hit follow, or I don't know, subscribe on podcasts too. It may be different depending on the platform, but do the thing where you get the podcast every day, and it helps us a lot here on this show. Locked On Big Ten is the social wherever you want to find it, at Locked On Big 10 on Twitter, and I'm at Nate with Sports. Nate Dickinson here with Locked On Big Ten.